Welcome to Ladies-in-Law, where real-world advice meets professional wisdom and empowerment in realms of law and business. Your hosts, Lisa Goucher, Dawn Smith, and Kellye Raymond, bring you innovative strategies, practical guidance, and inspirational stories. Join us as we inspire and support women to thrive in traditionally male-dominated fields. We're here to promote inclusivity and provide practical advice for success. Hi, Lisa and Dawn here today. We are the duo. We don't have the trio going on today because Kellye is caught up in a jury going down in Miami?
Yes, Miami. She's helping pick a jury, what she does best. This is her expertise and her specialty pulled her away today, so we will allow it.
And I'm pretty certain at some point she's going to share more about it. It's a super interesting case. And they're actually making a Netflix documentary that's rolling out in December. So I'm not going to say any more about it so that Kellye can share all that. But she is in on a super interesting case. We knew at some point that all three of us would not be able to make the schedule. So we anticipated that this was coming, but we still want to move forward. We've got important things to share. Today, we're talking about conflict resolution. All right. How sexy does that sound? Right? It is very, very important. So Dawn has a firm. I have a court reporting firm. And conflict resolution is so incredibly important. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to start us off on this topic.
I just think conflict resolution is something that we're all dealing with and something that we all need to grow and learn more about. I know I'm trying to learn about it more every day. If we're building relationships in our work environment, that is really what makes a difference. The closer relationships you have with the folks that you work with, the more that they believe in you and you believe in them, the more you're going to be able to accomplish. And I think conflict is really at the root of building those relationships because you are going to get into disagreements. You are going to think about things differently as you're moving forward with projects. And to be able to jump in, use some skills to be able to work through those problems at the beginning is just going to make you so much more productive.
So would you say, Dawn, it's actually a skill set to resolve conflict quickly? Would you
100%,
agree?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that if you're not thinking about it in those terms, meaning if you're not thinking about, okay, is this an opportunity to maybe resolve something early on? Are you forecasting something in the future? You know, you've got to be able to see those problems, especially if you're a leader. You've got to be able to see those problems coming your way and impacting the team. And you really have to be, you have to look at the big picture to be able to figure out what to solve, how to solve it, just to continue building those relationships in the workplace.
Okay, so start us off. What do you think some of the most crucial steps are to get us to the point of resolving the conflict effectively and efficiently?
So I think active listening. We've talked about that before. I think active listening is the most important thing that you can do as a good teammate. You are actually listening to what the person is saying as opposed to trying to figure out what you're going to say next. I think we're just all trying to get through situations and making sure, especially when you're at work, you don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to look like you don't know something. So you're really always thinking in your head, okay, how am I going to respond to what this other person is saying? As opposed to really listening first, you have plenty of time. Your mind works super fast. You have plenty of time to just listen, take a beat, and then respond. I think active listening is the most important thing.
All right. And then you also mentioned you've got to set some ground rules. So what does that mean? What does that look like, setting ground rules, if you're getting ready to have a meeting with someone?
So I think that when you're starting out and you have your own company, you really need some sort of a framework. Think about a framework to resolve any type of conflict that comes up. It doesn't have to be reported to the HR department or anything like that, right? Most of us aren't running huge companies, and we're just dealing with the same folks every day. But really, if you have some sort of structure to where, hey, if you have a problem with me, if you could bring that to my attention or go directly to the person that you have a conflict with, as opposed to talking behind that person's back about what happened. You should absolutely try to resolve any type of conflict with that person one-on-one without bringing anybody else into the mix, I think. But just having rules of engagement, we're talking about at our firm having a social contract, meaning, this is how we plan to work with each other, interact with our clients. These are our goals and objectives. These are the important things to our firm to make us better. And if you have that framework to operate under, I think it's just so helpful.
Well, that makes total sense too, because if you think about the work environment, you spend more time with the people you work with than you do your own family. So when you put it into that context, you're actually it's your work family, correct? And then from that point, you have to know the relationships, build the relationships internally to even have a foundation to pull everybody together to decide what the conflict is, right? Exactly. Who's affected, who's not affected. One of the things that I thought was super interesting, because I feel like we're in an era of you have to say we are doing this and everything's a team, right? But in this scenario, Dawn, you said you have to change to I statements.
Right. We were talking about that. Right. So I don't know, as opposed to blaming somebody else, like you did this, you did that, or we are handling a circumstance or a situation this way, you really need to think about where you're coming from personally. You have to take responsibility for your own actions, your own feelings. And it's I don't know, it's more helpful when you say, I felt like this when this situation happened, as opposed to
be specific.
Yeah, you made me feel this way, or you did this, or you did that. It should be more like, maybe you thought that you were coming across this way, but this is how I heard it. I think that really is helpful. Just explaining, not being accusatory, just explaining this is the way you took it.
All right, that makes sense. And so then that kind of just puts us into the next leg of it, which is brainstorming solutions. And so we've got a couple different levels there. It just depends on the conflict resolution that you're working on. If it's a higher level, you're a leader and you're working with your partners or your other leaders, then I feel like the word brainstorming is very appropriate. If you are an employer with an employee, I don't think it's brainstorming. I think it's more, you could ask that staff member, that employee, what are your suggestions? What are your recommendations? Because at the end of the day, the employer has to take everything into context, and whatever they decide that comes out of it, it actually affects the entire firm.
Yeah. What just came to mind is Sari Delamont. I'm a big fan of her. She is a jury consultant. Not that I cheat on Kellye at all, but so I've talked to Kellye a bunch about Sari Delamont, and she wrote a book called Hostage to Hero, and she talks about a design alliance, and she actually uses this design alliance concept for almost everything that she does with the groups that she teaches and everything. But it's about empowering the other person regardless of what their power is, especially if they feel powerless, empowering that other person to contribute to design how there's going to be interactions with conflict. What are your expectations about how we should handle a conflict if it comes up? What are steps A through Z? If we design this together, will you buy in? Will you actually comport with all of those design elements as we're resolving conflict? And I think if you get buy-in from the people that are around you, regardless of whether or not it's an employee, a partner, a senior associate that's on your level, some sort of an equal within, if you talk about it and design how the process is going to be together, you're always going to, I guess, thinking about it, I would say that you're always going to be more successful.
Well, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, it's like creating an outline and you bring everybody in and everybody has an understanding on how it's going to proceed. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and everybody contributes.
So, and that could even be like in the employee handbook, right?
Yeah.
It could be lined out and it would be something that everyone would be looped in on, because I think no one wants surprises. Nothing is more damaging than to be taken by surprise in a negative situation. I'm not talking about a birthday surprise. You could throw me a birthday surprise party anytime. I just mean if there's a conflict going on and somebody doesn't know what's about to happen, that could actually be very detrimental.
Yeah. Can you think of a situation that you've gone through at different levels where you've had to, I guess, learn skills or where you used tools that you thought were helpful in resolving conflicts?
Yeah, when my firm was much smaller, there's obviously the learning curve that's going on. And I'll just say I was at fault because I would go to each person and like ask them their opinion. And early on, I found out that was so unproductive. Each person thinks that they have got my ear and that they are going to be able to get what they want, right? And at the end of the day, I had to look at it collectively and make a decision that was best for the company, best for the firm. And so what I found out is that I was actually undermining my administrator and controller. And she just flat out told me, like, you got to knock it off because what you're doing is not creating productivity and happiness. It is actually creating more dissension amongst the folks who have the issue with one another. So that's really kind of when I backed out from that standpoint to let her do her thing. And really, Dawn, you talk about it all the time, like having systems in place, just like the outline she spoke about a moment ago. But my HR person, Linda Barilich, was so phenomenal in resolving conflicts in she'd pull folks in. She just didn't let things go, resolve them quickly, which we talked about that a moment ago. I think one of the essential components to successful conflict resolution, and let's face it, most of us do not like controversy, do not like conflict. We'll do anything we can to run away from it. But if it's not dealt with, it just simmers and simmers and simmers until it blows over. And you do not want within your company for it to become viral. So for me personally, it was allowing the people who are educated to establish those systems to deal with it directly, and me not be that little like, oh, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? It was just a process. Like for me, another component to it was I was working as an employee before I went into the court reporting firm. Well, there's a shift between being an employee and being a leader, or if you're currently in a firm and you're some sort of manager, you'll also appreciate that because there is a shift when you go from working as a paralegal or an attorney to be a paralegal manager, a managing partner. I mean, you have to learn that process and those steps. And the biggest component, which Dawn talked about early on, is the communication. But I would say conflict is going to come up and bite you so quick if you don't have a program in place. And so there's a couple different ways, depending on the level of the conflict. I feel it's really important to bring in, and if it warrants it, an objective third party. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to kind of touch on what you were saying a minute ago. I think that really making those steps, moving up through your company to get into a management level after you've been a worker bee, that is something that you really have to prepare and plan for, because you've built these relationships with people that are side by side with you. And those relationships that you've built have really helped you grow and progress into the person that you are. But there has to be certain boundaries that you set. There has to be boundaries, I think, when you move into a management position. And I think I see people struggle with that all the time, setting those boundaries, because like you said, you want to make people happy. You want to make everybody happy, feel like they have your ear, that you're their ally, and you cannot be everybody's ally all the time. You have to
really, because that's what I tried to do.
I mean, you cannot be everybody's ally all the time. You have to be an ally of your company. The company has to come first, and you have to make hard decisions when you're in those positions, and they're not always going to be popular. I mean, gathering information, respecting people's opinions, that's one thing. I think that's really important because everybody has a different perspective. So just getting those different perspectives before you make a decision is important, and knowing that your boss is listening to you and really taking into account what you have to say, I think that's important, right? I mean, you're just going to have better just better listening all around, better vibes all around if you have that open door of communication. But there has to be a limit, there has to be a boundary. And that's hard. It's really hard.
And just listening to you now, it reminds me. So in previous podcast, I think I shared a little bit about my previous court reporting firm. It started growing, it doubled the business, tripled the business. I got to tell you, there really wasn't much conflict when we were growing. We had to figure out how to divide components, departments, where we needed to add supervisors, where we needed to add managers. Those things, yeah, you might call them kind of conflict, but honestly, I'm sure anyone can appreciate the conflict really starts when things aren't going well.
When it's hard.
Yeah, when it's hard, when there's financial issues. And so for me, it was like I grew a court reporting firm from $1 million to $20 million. And then once we got to 20 million, there were changes in the industry. And so we fell back, I think, all the way to 8 million. And while those numbers still sound amazing, if you're not a numbers person, like, wow, you were still rocking and rolling. Well, I have to tell you, once you grow a business that big and you have all the infrastructure and the support systems and the staff and the insurance and the printer contracts and the lease space, it is really, really hard to downsize. And so what happened was 3 rounds of layoffs. We only anticipated or had hoped it would be 1 round before we recovered. But what I learned throughout that process, and really that's probably when I learned the most, was that once you get to a point where there's that type of conflict and people don't feel their jobs are secure, it's every man for themselves. And then if you're a leader, if you're the business owner, if you're a partner, it's your job to try to manage that conflict and try to, as best as you can, and I'm going to tell you, it's really hard to make the staff feel like that the company is going on. These are just rough times, and we are going to move through them. So really, that's when I learned the most about conflict resolution, and it definitely was not a happy time. It was 18 months, the most difficult 18 months of my entire business career. But from that, because that was back in 2013 to 2015, during that time period was the most challenging. But what it's done, and the thing that you need to remind yourself of, is that whatever conflicts you're experiencing now, like, it's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you stronger. It's going to give you more seasoning. It's going to give you more experience. You're probably going to be more enlightened. If you come out of a meeting regarding conflict resolution and you're not happy with the solution, then you will probably go look for another job. In some way, shape, or form, that conflict is serving you. So while it's challenging to keep that at the forefront of your mind, it's really important that it be mentioned. So Dawn, what else can you do as far as the environment's concerned?
I think it's one thing that you said that really resonated with me is really thinking about things, the highest achievements you've had in your life, or, the top 5 things that you're proud of. Almost every single time, I can't even think of one in my life that I'm really proud of that didn't involve some sort of conflict resolution, right? You overcame some sort of difficult situation and you stuck in there and you got through it. So you're teaching yourself to be resilient. You're teaching yourself that you can do hard things so that you can level up. If you just back away and just, go into the corner, right?
Don't quit.
Yeah, don't quit. And it's hard. But I try to think of that when I get into a situation to where I think this is just insurmountable. I think, okay, wait a second. There have been other things that I've done that have been hard. And I remember feeling that way. And that feeling that you have of getting to that next level or getting through it, I just think that you have to focus on that part of it. Just focus on that feeling of making it through, and just hold on and keep on using the tools that you're developing, that you've learned from prior conflict resolution, and just keep going.
Well, you did not come this far to come this far. That's like, there's so much in that statement. When you are working through something and it's hard, you didn't come this far to quit, right? So nobody's quitters. You're not quitters. We're not quitters. You just have to implement the skill set to get you to the next level. And part of that is learning process too. Now, in the scenario where you are dealing with a boss or a leader, or it could be partners, the environment is really important because you want to make sure that you're in a neutral environment, a collaborative environment. What do you think about that?
So there are certain feelings that you have associated with places. There are certain memories that you have in being in a certain place. If you're in one person's office or the other, that's going to create maybe a power dynamic. I mean, what are you looking to accomplish in that conversation? Do you need to just walk downstairs and get coffee, or go to lunch, go to a place that you've been to together where you have a good memory if you're trying to work on something hard? Just get out of the environment where you're living that conflict on a daily basis, just to get that fresh perspective. I mean, just walking outside and just taking a minute, taking a breath to just reset yourself, that helps a lot too, because when we get our emotions going, and there are emotions that regardless of whether or not this is business, this is law, we all are normal. We all have emotions. Some people...
We're not all normal.
Some people control...
Speak for yourself. No, just kidding.
Some people control their emotions a lot better than others. I would say that I have really tried to learn more that my emotions help. Feeling things, living things, especially as a trial lawyer, you have to feel where your clients are. You have to live through what they've gone through to be able to tell their story. And when you're dealing with conflict, you need to put yourself in that other person's shoes, and being in an environment to where you can feel open and actually think through things using your brain, as opposed to, those really hot and fast emotions about the circumstance or situation, that's going to help you get through it as well. So, pick a place that you feel comfortable.
It makes me think of, I don't know if this happens at your firm, but I can remember when I was in my own firms, a bunch of closed door meetings that sent up red flags throughout everyone in the office. So if you're trying to handle something that you feel is discreet and you just want it addressed, be careful with all the closed door meetings, right?
I hate closed doors.
I know.
I hate closed doors.
It means like, I am not open.
That's right.
Closed off, arms across my chest.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the reasons our offices all have glass doors in them, and we've expanded onto another floor, and the other floor does not have glass. So when I walk down there and all the doors are closed, I'm like, what is going on? There's got to be some sort of problem. I know that it's important to concentrate on certain things when you're trying to get stuff done, but I just feel like closed doors are a red flag. Something is not right if we've got to close our door to get something done.
I agree. I agree. And then when you get to the point that like you've went through the meeting, everybody needs to be clear, right?
Yeah, where are we at?
Yeah, with the takeaways, right?
Exactly. Where are we? What did we decide? Making sure it's, somewhere in writing is good. I always encourage our lawyers to make sure when you have some sort of a conversation, especially with opposing counsel or our clients, we want to document that. We want to put everything in writing based on what we understood happened, so that you have something to go back on. Because I will tell you, when you're living in the moment, everything seems so crystal clear. You remember exactly what happened. You remember exactly how you felt. You remember exactly what you're going to do. And then we all get busy and we're like, wait, what did we say? What did you say? What was I responsible for? What are you responsible for? You want to make sure that you leave that environment, especially if you get a solution, right? Woohoo, we got a solution. But if you don't have something in writing to go back to look at, then you're really doing a disservice to the whole environment, to all the parties involved.
You wasted everybody's time.
That's
if
right.
you don't have it in writing and everybody's crystal clear moving forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you may start the whole thing over again.
That's right.
All right. A really big one, and I want you to talk about it. What's your thoughts about emotional intelligence?
Oh, I think that that's so important. In fact, I didn't even know what that meant, emotional intelligence. I think it's like a big buzzword now, emotional intelligence. But
what does it mean? Tell us.
So it's the ability to really see how somebody is reacting at that moment, really looking at them, looking at their body language, just see how they're taking this in and being able to actually feel how they're feeling. They're angry. You can tell by facial expressions, they're either listening really well, they're understanding what you're saying, their arms are crossed, they're completely not open to what you're saying. You need to be able to sense how someone else is feeling to be a good leader and to be somebody that can resolve conflicts. Because if you can't see that other person for where they're meeting you at that moment, you can't help them through the situation, and you can't help your firm or your company through a difficult situation if you don't have that emotional intelligence.
Okay. And so for someone who doesn't understand emotional intelligence, how are you going to work in that scenario?
I think it's really difficult. I mean, there are some great trainings on emotional intelligence, some great books on emotional intelligence. We'll put those in the show notes below. I mean, you have to commit to educating yourself. And I think that just being aware of people around you and how those people are feeling and where they're coming from, it's not all about you.
Why? No crying?
Well, crying's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can cry sometimes.
I cry sometimes.
I cry a lot. Let me just say. But, I think that the main thing is to just make sure you're paying attention to what's going on around you. Just listen, watch, learn. That's how you're going to be a better person, a better leader.
That all makes so much sense. And there's actually so many components to conflict resolution. So Dawn, I want you just to go through, because we went through them all and we had a lot of in between. What are they?
So active listening is super important, right? You got to be a good listener. You got to establish your ground rules. Those are very, very important. Like, how are we going to design this relationship so that we can resolve conflicts? Focus on the other person's interests, not just yours. Focus on the why, not necessarily the position that someone's taking. Why are they taking that position? Use I instead of you. That's important. Make sure you're brainstorming possible solutions. Seek a mediator, a third party if you need to, and then try to be really clear in your understanding of what's happening and any type of resolution that you come to. Think of the environment that you're in, and then make sure you're clear and concise on what the solution is.
Is that all?
I think that's it.
I mean, that's a huge list. That's a lot, but it truly is a skill set that you develop over the course of time. So you got to start somewhere, and to have the framework that you talked about earlier, would you just tell us again that the author or the individual, the speaker, the jury consultant?
Yeah, no, Sari Delamont. She wrote a book called Hostage to Hero. It's all about really empowering the jury to come to the right conclusion in a case, really making them a part of the case from the very beginning. It's called a designed alliance. And I think that that's so helpful when you're thinking about building relationships and also putting people in a situation to where they're resolving conflicts.
Yeah, and I think that even personally, you can use that same concept when you're trying to resolve conflict within the family, with your spouse, with your friends. It just the active listening, all of it goes hand in hand.
100%.
Well, we would love to have some input from you regarding anything related to conflict resolution, or suggestions or recommendations regarding other topics that we should cover. Our email is hello at ladiesinlaw.com. And like, comment, subscribe. We can't wait to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Ladies in Law. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to shake things up in law and business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know what you think. Spread the word and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on socials for all the behind-the-scenes fun and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Until next time, keep rocking it, keep breaking the mold, and as always, keep aspiring to inspire.